Okay, guys, we're gonna go ahead and get started here. So this is, yeah, we're about at the top of the hour, so we'll go ahead and get started. So this is going to be episode 85 of Tech Thursdays. We do this live show every Thursdays. We rarely ever miss an episode. I think I've only missed like 2 weeks out of like the whole episodes 85 episodes now that we've been doing this. So this evening, there's actually not a whole lot of new things to talk about. We're finally over the wave after wave after wave of CPU releases. So first we had the Zen 5 CPUs, then we had Intel Core Ultra CPUs, and then finally to finish things off, we had the 9800X3D, which we're probably going to be focusing on some of the discussion on this episode. So for those of you that were lucky enough to get one, I know it's kind of hard to get one right now. Although what I have seen is that Micro Center is regularly getting more and more stock, so they are replenishing their stock. So if you live near a Micro Center, it's not too hard to get one of those, or it shouldn't be too hard. At least for most people, it hasn't been that hard if they live near a Micro Center. But for everybody else, yeah, it's definitely kind of challenging to get the CPU. Hey RK, good evening. Hey Mark, Mauricio, Capona, what's going on? Hey guys. You guys love the show, Tech Thursdays? Yeah, the show had a different name. It got renamed actually because there's another there is actually another kind of like a podcast format tech show that's been around for a very long time. So I had to rename it to Tech Thursdays. I proactively decided to change it to Tech Thursdays, considering we always do this episode or the show on Thursday, and I don't see that changing anytime soon. So this will be the name of the show going forward. Okay, so like I said, there's not a whole lot of new things to discuss. So with the 9800X3D, we are now finally done for the year. So the PS5 Pro is out, the 9800X3D is out, all the new motherboards are out for both AMD and Intel. So if you're somebody who is sitting on an old computer, or at least I would say like a 4-year-old computer, also known as a pandemic PC, or you're on something that's even older than that, now is a good time to upgrade the platform, because starting next year, there are going to be new graphics cards that are going to get announced. So now is not the time to be upgrading the graphics card. Now is the time to be upgrading the CPU and other parts of the computer. So that's what we're going to focus on some of the discussion this evening, kind of like going over some recommended builds, because I see a lot of comments on my videos pertaining to what motherboard should I get, or I've seen comments on the live stream builds that we've done asking like why did I get a Tai Chi when the Nova is S plus tier. So I think we're going to try to go and clear up some of the confusion around that, because, well, I guess let's go ahead and dive right into it. So just because a motherboard is S tier or S plus tier doesn't mean that you shouldn't consider the lower tier motherboards. This is not to say that the lower tier motherboards are bad. It just means that the value proposition that they offer, as well as the feature set that they come with, is lacking to some degree compared to the motherboards that are ranked higher. That doesn't mean that the ones that are higher on the list, like obviously the Nova ranks the highest, and it's constantly sold out. So one of the comments that I've noticed on these videos is, I can't get the Nova. Is it okay if I get the Tomahawk? So when I read that comment, to me it sounds like the individual who wrote that comment doesn't fully understand like what it is they're trying to accomplish. Obviously they want to build a gaming PC. But when I hear a comment like, or when I read a comment where it's like, if I can't get the Nova in my region because it's out of stock, can I get the Nova? Or can I get the Tomahawk? See, the problem with that statement is they're comparing two different tiers of products. That's like saying if I can't buy a Toyota Camry, can I get a Corolla? Does that make sense? It's like, if I can't get a certain tier of product, can I get the lower end product? Like, it's like the answer is yes, but you should at least consider other equivalent alternatives to the Nova. The Tomahawk is not an equivalent alternative to the Nova. It is a substitute for the Nova, but it is not an equivalent because it is not a dual chipset motherboard. It is a single chipset motherboard. So that's one thing I wanted to clear up on the comments, because I've seen a lot of those comments come through on the tier list videos as well as the live stream build videos, and I've seen the comment multiple times. People who cannot get the Nova for some reason, or they see me building a PC that doesn't feature the Nova. It's like, well, why aren't you building a PC with the Nova when you said it was S plus tier? Just because it's an S plus tier doesn't mean that it's the only one that you should consider. Does that make sense? The difference is that the X870E is a dual chipset solution, and the X870 is a single chipset solution. So we'll probably dive into that in a little bit. Due to the asynchronous... No, because asynchronous B clock is a separate feature. Most don't need the dual chipset. Yeah, but the thing is, if you're going to spend $300 on a motherboard, there's some overlap between the higher end X870s and the lower end or the entry level X870E. Like, for example, you could compare the Tomahawk at $300 versus the, I don't know, the X870E Aorus Pro or Aorus Elite. They're basically the same price. They're very close. One's a dual chipset, one's a single chipset. So, I mean, there's things like that. Tomahawk often goes on sale. I don't see it on sale that often online. Keep in mind that not everybody lives near a micro center. So for people who live near a micro center, it's different from people who do not have access to micro center. Or if they're like not even in North America and they're having to deal with like VAT tax and other things too. So, here, let's see. That's actually not what I wanted to go through first. But like the Nova seems to get a lot. I got a lot of questions on this motherboard. This motherboard is really, really good value. And there's a reason why it's constantly out of stock. It's constantly out of stock because people in the know figured out pretty easily, even if they didn't even watch any of my videos on this subject, they figured out, hey, this motherboard has the full dual chipset. It has 5 M.2 slots. It has a backplate and all the things that are standard on X870, meaning USB 4, Wi-Fi 7, etc. And they're like, oh, I mean, it has everything that you could possibly need. And it has a postcode debug. And it's $350. It's kind of like a no-brainer. When you look at it that way, that is the reason why the Nova is ranked as high as it's ranked. Because it has basically all the things that 95% of all people who just want to build a gaming PC would ever need. It has RGB. It has, you know, like all the other things that I just mentioned. It has the USB-C front panel. It has USB 3.0. It has like dual USB 3.0. It has no lane sharing for the GPU. The GPU always runs at 16 lanes, no matter how many M.2 drives you put on the board. So it's like the stuff like that where it's like you don't even have to think about it. You just get it and it's like, okay, you're satisfied. That's the reason why this motherboard ranks at the top of the list. So, but this motherboard doesn't have, there is one thing that this motherboard doesn't have that overclockers would be looking for. And that feature is the asynchronous B clock, also known as the dual external E clock generator. The Nova does not have that feature. So if you're someone who is really into overclocking and you want the best value, you gotta pay $100 more to step up to the Tai Chi, because the Tai Chi has that feature. So that is what differentiates the flagship from the non-flagship. The Tai Chi is ASRock's flagship in terms of the product stack. Nova is like underneath it in terms of the products. So the other thing that the Taichi has that this doesn't have, X8 slot for dual GPU. This doesn't have an X8 slot, so you can't really, I mean, you can run a second GPU down here in this very bottom slot, or this open X1. It technically won't fit in this open X1 because this heatsink like doesn't allow the X16 to get there. But, you know, you're not going to be running, no one's going to buy a Nova and they're going to run dual graphics cards for whatever the use case is. So, you know, but that being said, like I said, for 95% of people who want a gaming PC, the Nova, like, it checks off every single requirement that they may have, even requirements that they aren't even aware that they have. See, that's what's crazy about it. So that's the reason why the Nova is so good, and that's why it's constantly out of stock, and it's near impossible to get one. So that leaves the Taichi. The Taichi would be the other one from ASRock, which offers pretty much no compromise on M.2. You can fill it up with all the M.2s. The GPU is still going to run at X16. It's the only motherboard out of all the X870E motherboards. The Taichi is the only one, and the Taichi Lite. Those two are the only ones that still offer 6 SATA ports. 6 SATA ports. Not a whole lot of people need a whole bunch of SATA anymore. Definitely that use case is becoming more of a niche than it was like even 3 years ago. You look at all these modern new cases, I call them aquarium cases. They don't even have proper front intake fans anymore. There's nowhere to put a hard drive cage, except at the very bottom, and usually you're restricted to no more than, like, at most, on these modern cases, 2 3.5-inch hard drive slots. And you can still fit like 2 or 3 or sometimes 4 of the 2.5-inch SATA, which is fine, but, you know, it's, I don't know, 2.5-inch SATA is another one that's kind of like slowly fading away from the consumer market. So the Taichi, if you need 6 SATA, it has 6 SATA. It's literally like the only one. It's like the only one to choose from if you need that many SATA ports in 2024, soon to be 2025. And the Taichi, unlike the Nova, the Taichi is an eATX. This is an extended ATX form factor. It is wide, it is large, and in charge. Like, this is a commanding presence. So, just know that if you're going to get the Taichi, make sure that whatever case you're going to pair it up with has enough space to support an extended ATX form factor. Because most cases, most mid-towers do not fit extended ATX form factors. So that's the thing about the Taichi. But it has external e-clock. It has all the overclocking features. We did a video, a deep dive on all the BIOS settings for overclockers. Everything's there. You know, it's really good. It is one of the best motherboards if you want to run 4 sticks of DDR5. This one can do 4 sticks of DDR5 at 6,000 without too much trouble. All you have to do is go, like, use the settings that I put in my video from January on the Gigabyte Aorus Master, and those seem to work on the Taichi flawlessly. So that's pretty much what I have to say on Taichi. ASRock is pretty solid this generation. If you couldn't tell already, ASRock is pretty good this generation. They're offering pretty much their flagship motherboard at $450, which is significantly cheaper than the competition, while still offering all the same features that the competition offers, including things like a backplate. ASRock is, let me repeat that, ASRock is the only motherboard manufacturer that gives you a backplate not only at $450, but also at $350. If you want a backplate from Asus, you know how much you have to pay? $700. $700. The $500 Strix E-E doesn't include a backplate. No backplate on this $500 Asus motherboard. Meanwhile, Nova, $350, full backplate included. So no worrying about sag if you're going to keep your computer for like 5+ years and you're going to use a giant heavy Noctua D15 air cooler like on it for like 5 years straight. So you don't have to worry about like sag or deforming the board or whatever because it has a thick backplate. Meanwhile, you want a backplate from Asus, guess what? You got to pay $700. $700 for a backplate. X670E Hero didn't have a back. Yeah, you're right. Yes. Asus was super cheap. I think they took some criticism to heart and added a backplate on their $700 board because last generation, if you wanted a backplate from Asus, you had to pay $1,000 for the Crosshair Extreme. That's how much you had to pay if you wanted a backplate on an Asus motherboard 2 years ago. So they listened and they kind of came down, like they begrudgingly put a backplate on their $700 motherboard because everybody else was giving you a $700 motherboard with a backplate, I guess. I mean, maybe they were the only ones. I mean, back then, but you know who's gotten a little bit more stingy? Gigabyte. Last gen, the $500 X670E Aorus Master, that motherboard featured a backplate on their $500 motherboard. This new generation, and that one was also an EATX. This new one, this X870E Aorus Master, is a standard ATX, so it's smaller than the previous one. Some might see that as a positive, though. But there's no backplate. Still the same price, but no backplate. And it's smaller. That sounds like cost cutting. If you want a backplate from Gigabyte, you gotta step up to their $800 Aorus Extreme AI top. So this is their flagship, the new flagship meant for AI, with an RGB Wi-Fi 7 antenna. This one features a backplate. Now, they don't even show the picture of it, but it does have a backplate. It's like $800, I think, $800. This one basically is the Gigabyte equivalent to the Hero. So Hero competes with Aorus Extreme AI Top. Strix competes with the Aorus Master this generation. And then they also Strix E, the Dash E, and the Aorus Master compete with the Tai Chi from a price standpoint, but even the Tai Chi is still like $50 cheaper than both of them. So that shows you how much value ASRock is providing. Oh, the other thing too is ASRock does provide a very nice like ARGB extension cable that none of the others, as far as I know, some of the others have like an adapter from ARGB to that weird like 3-pin, I forget what that, it's like an old Molex type connector. But yeah, but ASRock's got everything you need if you're someone who wants to do RGB. And they're coming in at the cheapest price for the flagship. MSI is another one that's kind of underwhelming because the Carbon is their $500. So this is the thing that competes with the Aorus Master and the Dash E and the Tai Chi. This, at $500, does not feature a backplate. So unfortunately, no backplate. So, and if you want a backplate, so for some reason, there is a chance that next year MSI will refresh the lineup and they'll include an Ace, but I wouldn't bet on it. I wouldn't count on them to provide an X870E Ace because they're just now rolling out the Godlike. And the Godlike, as you can imagine, this one definitely includes a backplate, but this is over $1,000. So it's like, this is basically like just like Asus's Extreme from 2 years ago, and even like the previous generation Godlike, which was like a terrible choice. But this Godlike, unlike the previous Godlike, this Godlike is legit good. It's just extremely expensive. Extremely expensive. If you guys tuned in yesterday, MSI, they were live streaming a dedicated live stream to this specific motherboard. So it was dedicated to the Godlike. They showed it off. They went over all the different features that it has. Yeah, it is jam-packed with stuff. That you're getting a lot, but you're paying a lot of money for what is an EATX motherboard with like multiple screens on it and some kind of like remote control extension fan header thing, as well as a Gen 5 X8 PCIe expansion card, which is pretty nice. So when you think about it, the motherboard has 5 M.2s on the physical motherboard, plus 2 more from the add-in card, which is included in the box with the board. So you're potentially able to run 7 M.2 drives on the Godlike, but it is super expensive. So the way I would have to figure out if this is actually worth its asking price, I would have to determine, okay, how much does an expansion card that can fit 2 Gen 5 SSDs cost normally? And like how much is a fan hub and whatever else is in the box as add-ons that you don't normally get when you buy a standard motherboard. So they have the most expensive board this generation, as far as I know. Asus has not announced an Extreme. They're still using the old Extreme from the last generation. So because X870E is more of like a refresh to X670E, kind of like how Z790 was a refresh to Z690 on the Intel side. So it's kind of like that. So since it's the same socket, Godlike is way more than I could use. Yeah, for most people, this is complete overkill. One of the reasons why the Godlike exists is so that people will pay attention to MSI. It's like if they see something like this somewhere on social media, or they see some tech tuber talking about the Godlike or showing it off, they're going to be like, hey, man, MSI's got a super expensive board. Therefore, it creates a psychological conditioning in their mind where they automatically assume that MSI is a good brand or it has like high quality products. You know how it is. It's social engineering. That's basically what this is. It's building mindshare through a Halo tier product. That's basically what this is. Most people are not going to ever get this. They don't really want to spend $1,000 or more on a motherboard. So I totally get that, but that's what it is. So that pretty much rounds out all of them. You got your 700 from Asus. You have a equivalent from Gigabyte, the AI Top. Then you have your $500 motherboards. So you got the Strix, the Master. The Taichi's technically $450, so it's technically close to the $500 mark, but it is technically cheaper. It's the lowest cost of the flagships, and then you've got the Carbon as the other $500. So lots of $500 choices. But like I said in previous episodes, $500 is the ceiling. Like, once you spend $500 on a motherboard, you're maxing out the value that you're getting for your dollar. Anything more that you spend, you're not really going to get nearly as much value. Meaning, if you buy... We can use Asus as an example, because Asus has a $500 Dash E, and they've got a $700 Hero. So stepping up from the Strix to the Hero, you're really not getting that much more. In fact, some of the heat sinks, so the Strix heat sinks are actually superior to the Hero's heat sinks. So the Hero has one big heat sink, and then it has like this mediocre thin plate to cover the remaining SSDs. The Strix has 3 thick boy heat sinks. In fact, this top one has a dedicated heat pipe for Gen 5 cooling. So the Strix actually has far superior SSD cooling compared to the Hero. And then it has the separate plate down there for the Gen 4 SSDs. And it's $200 cheaper. And it also provides the asynchronous mode. So both of these provide asynchronous mode. So there's really not much more that you're getting for that extra $200 buying the Hero. The only thing that you really get is you get better physical buttons on the back for clear CMOS and BIOS flashback, whereas on the Dash E, they're like these really tiny buttons that are really hard to reach. We can kind of do a comparison here. So if we look at this, see how the Dash E has these tiny little buttons that are hard to reach? They're microscopic buttons, but the Hero has proper buttons. It has the big traditional buttons up here at the top. So you're paying $200 for big buttons and dual LAN. You get a 2.5 gig LAN, but less USB Type A. The Strix actually has more USB on the back. So there's a trade-off. For $200, they give you a 200 extra dollars, they give you a 2.5, larger buttons, a back plate, and I guess a fancy like LED animated panel, but you can't actually change this animation. So I mean that's pretty much it for $200 extra. So most people, like I said, most people aren't going to want to spend more than, look at how thick those heat sinks are. See, those are some really good heat sinks compared to the Hero. So most people are not really going to spend or get a lot more value once they go beyond $500. Yes, the ProArt is on the tier list. Would you agree that the B650E is the sweet spot in terms of value? No, because B650E has been replaced. So B650E, okay, so that's a very good question. Here, let me use Tomahawk as an example. This is a B650E. This motherboard is B650E. X870 equals B650E with Wi-Fi 7 as an upgrade, and, well, standard I should say, and it also includes USB 4. There was only one B650E that included, well, actually no, that's not true. There is actually a newer there's a newer Aorus motherboard from Gigabyte that has USB 4, and it's B650E. But they may have rebranded it to X870. So let me clear this up. Anyone who is thinking of B650E, do not buy B650E. Buy X870. X870 is B650E. This is B650E, and X870E is X670E. So, I mean, that's going to be the difference. X870 equals B650E, not B650. It is B650E. That is why I am emphasizing the E, because B650E equals X870 in terms of the single chipset. So here, let's clarify that even further. So what is X670E becomes X870E. X670 becomes end of life. B650E becomes X870. B650, I don't know what happens to this. It continues, well, this might get rebranded to B850. Who knows? Maybe. I don't actually know. I don't know what the deal is down here. All I know is this is a true statement, and these two are also true statements. Maybe that's true. I don't know. I don't know much about this because you can't buy a B850, so that is that. So, like I said, X670E, anyone who is considering X670E, you need to be looking at X870E. Anyone who is considering B650E needs to be considering X870. Now let's go over the lanes. X670E features 24 PCIe 5.0 lanes. And then how many Gen 4? 12. 12 PCIe 4.0. And 8 PCIe 3.0. That is X670E. Now X870E. X870E features 24 PCIe 5.0. Did somebody follow on Twitch? We got a Twitch follower, even though I'm not even streaming on Twitch. Wow, that's surprising. Thanks for the follow, I guess. PCIe 4.0. Now, there is one caveat. Technically, we should say this is 20. Because plus USB 4. And then we still have the 8 PCIe 3.0. Okay, so this is the old chipset. This is the new chipset. Flagship chipset. These are the dual chipsets. So now we have B650E. B650E features 24 PCIe 5.0 and 8 PCIe 4.0 and 4 PCIe 3.0. This is what B650 features. Now, all of the Gen 5 lanes are direct CPU connected lanes. They bypass the chipset. They don't even connect through the chipset. They go straight into the CPU. Same thing with B650E. The 24 Gen 5 lanes connect straight to the CPU, which means this is the chipset. These are the chipset lanes. The Gen 4 and Gen 3 are chipset lanes. Now, what is X870? X870 has 20 PCIe 5.0 plus USB 4. And then it has 8 PCIe 4.0, and then it has 4 PCIe 3.0. So as you can see, what is the difference? 24 lanes, you subtract 4 because you need 4 of those lanes to be transformed into the dual 40 gigabit USB 4. That is the reason why there is a total lane count reduction going from the old chipset X670E to X870E. This is also true going from B650E to X870. So, unless you absolutely don't need USB 4 or you don't think you'll ever need it for whatever reason, you can get one of these on clearance and possibly save money this holiday season because there are going to be deals. There's going to be Black Friday deals on Newegg, possibly on other e-tailers. And then Micro Center is offering, I think, a bundle with the X670E Tomahawk right now with the 9800X3D. So there's bundles out there. There's bundles out there to take advantage of going with the last generation motherboards if you're okay with not wanting Wi-Fi 7 or you don't want USB 4 because you'll never use USB 4, whatever the reason may be, you can save money and get a previous generation motherboard. Just know that if you're going to buy one of these older motherboards, you are going to most likely, there is a very high probability that you will be required to update the BIOS using BIOS flashback, because if you install this new 9800X3D in one of these older motherboards, there's a high probability, like 80% chance or higher, that it will not post. It will not recognize the CPU because the BIOS on these motherboards from the factory is probably really old. So there's a good chance that it will not recognize the CPU and it will not it'll appear like it's defective. What you have to do is you have to flash the newest BIOS without a CPU and without RAM. And these motherboards have this feature called BIOS flashback. I have an entire video on the channel on how to do that. I think the demo shows Gigabyte, but the procedure, there's a video that I have that shows what you're supposed to rename the file to. It depends on if you're on, so I guess we'll put the notes in here. How to use BIOS flashback. So you need to get a USB drive that's okay. USB thumb drive needs to be formatted to FAT32. If you don't know how to do that, you're going to have to look up how to do that, although I think that was explained in the video that I did. And then the instructions for ASRock, you download the BIOS, rename the BIOS file to creative.rom. For MSI, rename the BIOS file to msi.rom. For Gigabyte, rename the BIOS file to, what was this one called? Gigabyte, I forget if it's all caps or all lowercase. Gigabyte dot bin. Yeah, they were the weird one. And then ASUS has a built-in tool. There's an executable in the folder. When you download the ASUS BIOS, it'll rename it automatically. Otherwise, you have to look up what it needs to be renamed to, because it's different for every single ASUS motherboard. For ASUS, it's complicated, but also easy. That's all we're going to say for ASUS. So that covers all of them. That is what you will need to do if you're going to purchase one of these brand new, and you're going to install either a 9800X3D or any of the Zen 5. Those are the Ryzen 9000 series CPUs. So if you're curious on how to do that, check out the video that's on the channel. Otherwise, you can avoid having to do this if you buy the newer motherboards, because all the newer motherboards, even on the very first BIOS release, they natively support even the just released 9800X3D. So if you don't want to do this, buy the newer motherboards. Do not buy the old motherboards if you're afraid of using BIOS flashback. Okay. So I think this should clear up the questions on the chipset, because there's a lot, I know, and part of it is AMD did not really choose a good name, I guess, because X870, people are going to assume, oh, X870, that's like X670. Actually, no, it's not. It's actually B650E, because X670 is dual chipset, and this is single chipset, hence why it's basically like this. So, but anyway, this explains the mapping. This maps to this. This maps to that. You want to go from a 5950X to a 9950X? No, you won't be waiting that. Oh wait, unless you plan to wait that long, it won't be that long. It will probably be next year. It's probably going to be February, if I had to guess. 9950X3D will probably launch around Monster Hunter Wilds. Going for Nova. You mean the chipset is cooler? Maybe the chipset is cooler. I don't know how the CPU is going to run any different, because that's based off of the cooler. But anyway, this should answer those questions on that. Have you set CO on that with the Tomahawk? So I don't have the Tomahawk with me anymore. So I will not be able to use the Tomahawk for now. But you can easily use Curve Optimizer. I mean, you can also be... So here's the thing, guys. If you're trying to get better performance out of a 9800X3D, you need to be looking into Curve Shaper. Curve Shaper is significantly better as a tool set than Curve Optimizer. Unless you're doing per core Curve Optimizer, there is way better tuning that you can get from using Curve Shaper. So you should be checking out Curve Shaper. If you don't know how to use Curve Shaper, look at the deep dive video that I did on it, because I explain the frequency zones and the temperature ranges and all that stuff. You can. It's not guaranteed to work, though. All the motherboards have differences in their trace layouts. So what works on ASRock is not guaranteed to work on MSI. But you can try it and see if it works. A lot of that, I assume you're talking about the... Are you talking about the CPU overclocking, or are you talking about the RAM overclocking? I mean, either way, so for CPU, yeah, you could definitely try that, because that's going to be based on the CPU. But for the RAM is going to be dependent on the motherboard. So what works for an ASRock motherboard may not work on an MSI motherboard for memory. So that would require a lot of trial and error. I mean, you can try those settings and see if it works. You're either going to get lucky and it works, or you're going to get unlucky and it's not going to work. There's nothing in between. There's none of this maybe. It's either going to work or it won't work. It's pretty cut and dry when it comes to RAM. Oh, I guess just to finish this, X670 has a total of 4 PCIe 5.0 lanes. And then it would have 28 PCIe 4.0 lanes. And then it would have... Oh, no, not 28. It would be 32. 32 PCIe 4.0, because it would be 20 plus 12. So that'd be 32. And then, because it would have 20 CPU lanes that run at Gen 4, and then it would have the 12 from the chipset, and then it would have the 8 PCIe 3.0. So that's X670. So notice that this is definitely not like this. This and this are not equal. This actually well, the funny thing is, this has more lanes than the new X870. The difference is Gen 5. This is Gen 5. This is mostly Gen 4. It only has a measly 4. Basically, X670 provided one Gen 5 SSD. And that was the only thing about it that was Gen 5. Everything else was like Gen 4 and Gen 3. So, X670 is a dual chipset just like these. So you had your dual chipset, which includes X870E, X670E, and X670. That's dual. Then you have single. Single chipset is X870, B650E, and B650. Assuming an X870E Tai Chi running 192, if it works, it'll work. I was running 192 gigabytes at 6,000 on the Tai Chi for quite a while, and it was working. What do you need that much RAM for, though? Usually, so here's the thing, if you want to run that much RAM, I hope you're actually utilizing that RAM. Otherwise, that's not a good use of... Like, you could get better performance with less RAM. Unless you're trying to run like a mini HEDT computer. That much RAM is complete overkill for a 9800X3D. Like, that would be for a... So here's the thing, like if you're truly wanting to run 100, well, okay, if you're gonna run VMs, I hope you're gonna run a 16-core 9950X if you're gonna run that much RAM, because if you're truly doing virtual machines, you're gonna need more physical cores than just 8 cores. So I mean, I wouldn't do 192 gigabytes of RAM unless I'm doing 9950X. 9950X, okay. Yeah, now that makes more sense. That makes more sense. No, it doesn't really degrade your performance if you're running it at 6000. See, that's a common misconception. The only reason why people were saying that high amount of RAM is worse performance is because typically if you're running a lot of RAM, you're not running the RAM at high speeds. But with the Tai Chi, you can run 192 gigabytes at 6000. But that is the absolute maximum speed that you could possibly do on that motherboard. You would not want to go any higher than that. It would definitely be unstable. And even then, it really depends on the type of RAM that you're using, because you try not to run super high voltages. You also, when you're running that much RAM, you don't want high voltage. That's going to concentrate a lot of heat. All four sticks are so close together without any active cooling, unless you're running active cooling on the RAM. Yeah, you're going to be running, like, at best, you'll be running anywhere from 5600 to 6000. But more realistically, what I've seen people do, if they're running 192 gigabytes, they're typically running either at 4800 or 5200. 5200 worked for Zen 4. 5600 works for Zen 5. And 6000 does also work, but 6000 requires a lot of manual tuning of the on-die termination values. It requires manual tuning. You will not be able to just, like, say, okay, run 6000 and expect it to work. It's not going to work. You're going to have to do manual setup to get it to actually be stable with that much RAM at that kind of speed. You cannot clone an M.2 1 terabyte because it heats up too much and stops. What? If you're trying to use a Gen 5 SSD, you have to have very good cooling on the drive. It will automatically thermal throttle if you have no cooling on it. A Gen 5 SSD is not designed to run without a heatsink, guys. In fact, it needs a very high-end heatsink. It cannot be a little slab of metal. What works on a Gen 4 SSD is definitely not going to handle a Gen 5 SSD. It needs to have a very, very thick heatsink. So let me show you what a good heatsink looks like. Actually, that's one of my criticisms of some of these motherboards. So the Tomahawk, this supports Gen 5. But I'm going to be honest with you guys, this heatsink, this top heatsink for the Gen 5 drive on the Tomahawk, that is not adequate for a Gen 5 SSD. So, in fact, the Hero, the $700 Crosshair Hero from Asus, has a thick heatsink. This thing is not thick enough. You know why? Where is that thing? So, Crucial T700, or well, actually, I don't know where the box is right now, but the Inland TD510, the $700 Hero. This heatsink can barely handle a Gen 5 SSD. To put things into perspective, the Gen 5 SSD will idle at around 60 degrees Celsius on the X870E Hero with this big heatsink. So this Tomahawk is definitely, wherever that Tomahawk is, where did I put it? Oh, right here. This is definitely inadequate. But just looking at this, I'm like, yeah, no, that is not going to handle a Gen 5 SSD. That can handle a Gen 4 SSD. That cannot handle a Gen 5 SSD, even though the slot is Gen 5. So that's very disappointing. The $700 Heroes heatsink can barely handle a Gen 5 SSD. You know what can handle a Gen 5 SSD? Gigabyte. The one thing Gigabyte knows how to do well, Gen 5 cooling. It has the thick, you can see the surface area in those thin cutouts. This heatsink can handle a Gen 5 SSD no problem. This thing drops the temperature by 15 degrees. The same exact SSD in a Gigabyte Aorus Master runs at 50 degrees to 52 degrees max. So, massive upgrade by going with the Gigabyte for Gen 5 cooling. Yeah, as someone using and testing these Gen 5 SSD, T700 is a Gen 5 SSD, T705 is an even faster Gen 5 SSD. You know, man, this Crosshair Hero, very, very disappointing. Very disappointing on Asus. $700 can barely handle a Gen 5 SSD. Barely handles a Gen 5. The Gigabyte at $500 can totally handle the Gen 5 SSD. At least Gigabyte put a proper size and properly finned off, machine finned, thick boy heatsink. This thing is as tall as the VRM shroud and VRM heatsink. Someone at Gigabyte knows what they're doing when it comes to cooling a Gen 5. The Carbon, yeah, the Carbon's also too small. The Carbon's is also inadequate. This is inadequate, although I have not tested, so I don't really know. I've only tested Gigabyte and Asus on the Gen 5. But, man, Asus basically almost fails. It almost fails. It can barely handle it. Meanwhile, Gigabyte passes with flying colors. And that tells me that their Aorus Extreme AI Top will also handle Gen 5 cooling with this massive heatsink on there. So, yeah, that is a big heatsink on there. So, at least Gigabyte's doing proper heatsinks for their cooling. But, yeah, Gen 5, man, Gen 5 SSDs are not easy. The Strix, okay, the Strix has some thick heatsinks. This top one has a full metal heat pipe on it. So, I actually feel like the Strix, which is $200 less than the Hero, has superior cooling when it comes to cooling Gen 5 SSDs. Taichi looks like it's got the right size, but I didn't test the Taichi for Gen 5. I only tested Gen 4, so I don't actually know how well. I would assume this one would probably do either just as good as the Asus one or marginally better because it looks like it's longer. It's longer, but it's about the same. It's the overall same size as the Asus one, so it's probably not going to do as good as Gigabyte. The nice thing about Gigabyte, you can see it. Gigabyte has these cutouts, so it has way more surface area to dissipate the heat. None of the others did that, except maybe the Strix. The Strix from Asus does it on 2 of them. The Hero is complete fail. The Taichi is basically almost probably going to fail. And the Carbon looks like it's going to fail. So this one looks longer than the Asus one, but it doesn't look as thick as the Asus one. So it's probably going to fail just like the Asus. So Gigabyte apparently did something right. Like their heatsink is good. What's my opinion on the ProArt? The ProArt is not for gamers. The ProArt is for like someone who either can't afford Threadripper or is trying to build like a mini HEDT computer. But yet the ProArt doesn't have the debug and the diagnostics. So it's kind of like, I don't know. I'm not a big fan of the ProArt. The ProArt looks good, but that's about it. I mean, we can pull it up. I'll show you why I don't like it. If you watched the tier list video, you probably would have heard my thoughts on that one. So the ProArt from Asus. This motherboard is targeted at the like professionals, for like it's not meant for gamers. You can definitely get a better. If you're a gamer, there's definitely better options. If you're an overclocker, there's significantly better options than this, even at the same price point. So who is this for? I was trying to figure out who actually needs this. Really, the only person that I can think of who needs this or would get or gravitate toward this type of board, first of all, someone who wants 10 gig LAN and they don't want to either install an add-in card or they don't want to spend, like they don't want to spend $700 or more for a motherboard that includes 10 gig, because this is the cheapest option, coming in at $479, about $480 for a motherboard that includes 10 gig LAN. Number one thing I don't like about it, no postcode debug. There's no postcode debug. So, here's an interesting comment that I've seen from some people who I've seen buy motherboards and then they end up returning them because they think the motherboard's defective, but the reality is they didn't let the DDR5 train. So I've seen comments like yellow light of death, DRAM yellow light of death, doesn't work, stuck on yellow light. So, okay, first of all, there's nothing wrong. They have to wait for the memory to train. See, the problem is someone who's going to buy this, the person who's going to buy the ProArt is probably going to use 4 sticks of memory because they're trying to build some kind of productivity machine. You're going to run a lot of RAM, so we're talking either 96 gigabytes, 128 gigabytes, or even 192 gigabytes of VRAM. They might also run dual graphics cards, dual professional blower style graphics cards. That is the reason why the ProArt has this X16 and then it shares bandwidth. There it is, everybody's favorite thing, sharing GPU lanes. It shares bandwidth with the second slot. So when you plug a second graphics card in the second slot, the top slot runs at X8. So you get X8 here and X8 there. Now, for people that are doing productivity, that's fine. That's how it has always been. Anyone who is familiar with SLI and Crossfire back in the day, you would have known that when you run dual GPU, unless you're on Threadripper, you're going to be running at X8 on both graphics cards. Threadripper is the only platform that if you're running 2 or 3 or 4 graphics cards, all the graphics cards run at the full X16 lanes. So, okay, I guess, Xeon or some other server HEDT stuff from back in the day also would do the same thing. But currently, Threadripper is the only thing out there that can do multi-GPU and not sacrifice bandwidth, PCIe bandwidth, across multiple devices. So like I said, someone who's trying to build a productivity machine, they don't have money to spend on Threadripper for whatever reason, yet they somehow have money to buy dual professional graphics cards. So anyway, the point is, no diagnostic tools, like there's no debug. You only get the stupid like little LEDs that blink, like the yellow one for DRAM, the red one for CPU, the green one for VGA, and the white one for post. You only get the 4 little ASUS LEDs up here. You don't get your postcode debug. So it's kind of a strange choice to charge almost $500 and not include a postcode debug when the sort of person that buys this board is most likely going to install a lot of RAM, so they don't want to be sitting in the dark having no idea what's going on, except there's a little yellow light on the motherboard. Maybe it's doing something. Unless they know that that means memory training, they're going to freak out and think that it's defective, or yellow light of death, panic attack, return the whole thing, and they're basically back to square one. So the omission of the postcode on a near $500 motherboard is very, very bad. Very bad from ASUS. But otherwise, it's kind of an okay product. Other than that, I think it's expensive for what it is. But again, it's the cheapest one that offers 10 gig LAN. Otherwise, if you're see the problem for the Pro Art, and here's where I think Asus kind of misses the plot, or they're just selling on their brand recognition, because there's a better choice. If someone's looking for an AI or a productivity workstation thing, the Gigabyte Aorus Extreme AI Top is going to be a better choice. Yes, it's more expensive, but they're getting they're getting, not only are they getting 10 gig LAN, they're getting dual NIC and it's dual 10 gig LAN. So, and it has the diagnostic. You're getting the full postcode debug and all the diagnostic LEDs and all that good stuff. So I feel like, unfortunately for Asus, like, I'm just thinking of it from myself, like, because I make videos, you know, if I was going to build a workstation for DaVinci Resolve and Adobe Premiere or Adobe whatever, you know, like, if I was going to do that, I would not buy the, like, if I was not going to go Threadripper, because my actual answer is go Threadripper, but if I was restricted to not going Threadripper on purpose, and I had to choose from one of these motherboards, I would probably either choose the Aorus Master or the Aorus Extreme for productivity, because I think these are better choices than the Pro Art. It's like with the Extreme, you can dual GPU. You can do 2 graphics cards. This one will run at X8. The second one will run at X8. Yeah, you won't be able to use the bottom one because the second GPU will cover up the bottom slot. But the thing is, on the AI top, the second slot shares lanes with the last SSD anyway. So I'm going to be using those lanes for the SSD because I'm going to be maxing out the storage. So I would never use the bottom slot in the first place. So I'd rather just dual GPU. One here at X8, one down here at X8, and we're good to go. It achieves the exact same thing that the Pro Art offers, while it also has the 10 gig LAN. So, and the diagnostics, and it has like better, you know, like it has the button for the GPU. I don't think the Pro Art has that, although the Pro Art probably has Asus's new innovative thing for removing the GPU. I think they do. Possibly. Maybe. Oh, the one thing that Asus does have, though, I want to point something out. So Asus, the Pro Art has... Okay, they can't claim USB 4 because every X870 motherboard and X870 has USB 4, so that's, like, not going to do anything. But they do have the DisplayPort input, which none of the others offer. So if you're somebody who needs DisplayPort input for whatever reason, this does offer that. So, I mean, that's kind of its other niche. The niche is that it has 10 gig LAN for around $500, and it has DisplayPort input. And it has the proper spacing for dual blower-style graphics cards, where you can still use that bottom slot. So, I mean, that's kind of what it's good for. I definitely don't recommend it for gaming, though. There's way better choices. There's much better choices at, like, the $300 price point. What would I buy for a doctor's office server? A doctor's office server. It would probably be AM5 Epic. It would either be Epic AM5 or it would probably be Epic well, it depends on, you said a doctor's office, so I would imagine a 16-core Epic would probably be good enough. I would not buy a standard Ryzen, though. For a server, no. I would get the Epic. AM5 Epic. I think it's like 4000 series Epic or whatever. I forget what the model numbers are. The SKUs on that. No, it would basically be an Epic CPU that goes in a AM5 socket. So the motherboard would probably be from like Supermicro or something. No, it doesn't necessarily have to be Threadripper for that use case. I mean, it could, but it would probably be better off with like an actual professional, like a Supermicro solution that is either going to be embedded or not embedded. It's either going to be like AM5 based Epic, or it would be Epic, which is the Threadripper socket, but it would be an Epic CPU. And the reason why I'm saying Epic is because You're asking for a doctor's office server. So that's going to be an actual business application or use case. So it's going to it needs to have 24/7 uptime. That means you're not going to be rolling out updates. There's none of this restarting the computer stuff. It's going to be up and running all the time. So Threadripper's not really meant to be used as a dedicated 24/7 server because it clocks higher than what that sort of environment needs. So that's the reason why it'd probably be Epic. Good question though. I like those questions that are like they're way more out in like the real world. Like they're not exactly gaming builds. It's more like what do I recommend for something that other than gaming. So no, AM5 Epic uses less power than regular AM5. It doesn't run that fast. So actually maybe we should look at what that is. AM5. I think it's this. No, that's no, not this. So this is the big boy Epic. I'm not talking about this. I'm talking about this one? Yes, this one. 4000 series Epic. Hold on.
For AMD and our partners.
Yeah, this.
Together, we're announcing a new
this
addition
is what I would
to the
recommend.
AMD Epic family, the Epic 4000 series.
Right there. AM5 based Epic. This is what I would recommend for the doctor's office. So a 16 core, 32 thread server, single socket. I mean, maybe dual socket, but I don't know if that's needed.
These processors use our 4th generation Zen cores and are designed to provide leading performance.
Looks a lot like what you guys are used to seeing on Ryzen. But this is what I mean. Possibly this, or maybe like the 32 core, 24 core Epic. Anyway, that's basically what I would probably recommend.
At attractive price points for small businesses and dedicated hosts.
Small businesses, so we're talking doctor's clinic. This is not a hospital. Hospital is going to be completely different. It's going to be a server farm. That's nothing like this.
The Epic 4004 round.
This would probably consist of either a dual socket or it would be like 2 servers or like fully redundant, active standby, whatever the architecture may be.
Out a robust set of enterprise CPU solutions. From the performance-leading, highly scalable Epic 9000
for small
series
dentists,
designed to provide
for something like that, it'd probably
the
be
best
one of these.
performance and features.
See, the reason why for a real business like that, I do not recommend consumer-grade hardware, which is typically Ryzen. I would recommend the enterprise-grade for businesses, which is what Epic is. Because this is meant... Guys, the difference between Epic and Ryzen... Epic is meant to be 100% stable no matter what. It needs to be fully redundant. So that means in some cases there could be, multiple servers in a cluster, but it depends on how big or small the business is. And it doesn't need to run super fast. So what matters is reliability, high availability, uptime, and like redundancy, like data redundancy, data security, that kind of stuff. Remote system management is another thing that you get with the Epic motherboards. You do not get that on like a standard Ryzen PC.
Optimized across a broad range of workloads and use cases.
Yes, it's ECC.
To our highly energy efficient, edge optimized Epic 8000 series, designed for intelligent edge and telco. To the widely deployed Epic 7000 series, proven technology providing great performance and scalability. To the new 4000 series.
Yeah, this one. Either the 4000 series or maybe like a lower core variant of the 7000 series. That's probably what I would say. 9 out of 10 dentists recommend Epic. Okay. Well, anyway, that covers that. That was a good question, though. We don't normally talk about the enterprise stuff on this channel. Will I buy a 5090? It depends on how much it costs. If it's too expensive, no. What's the best board to get if you want to add 10 gigabit without taking lanes from the GPU? Oh, you want to add 10 gig. Oh, okay. This one. Nova. Everybody's favorite. Nova. You know why? You can put 10 gig down at the bottom and it'll work. 10 gig only needs 2 lanes of Gen 3, guys. So as long as you're buying a 10 gig network card that is Gen 3 speed or higher, and it's X4 form factor, it'll work at the full 10 gigabit speed with only 2 lanes of Gen 3, which is exactly what the bottom slot on the Nova offers. This is the reason why the Nova is S+. This is another example of why the Nova is the S+ motherboard of this generation. Because, like I said in that video, this motherboard has things that you don't even know you need. It has the ability to handle certain use cases that you don't even know that you would run into. So, for example, the question about what is the cheapest option to get 10 gigabit LAN on one of the motherboards, look for a motherboard that has 2 lanes of Gen 3. That is the cheapest way to do it, and the Nova will do that. What would the best RAM for a gaming system? ASRock, da, 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 da. If you're doing 64 gigs, it's going to be 6,000. 8,000 is not going to run on 64 gigs, at least not yet. For active RAM cooling, is using motherboard standoff extensions with 60 to 80 millimeter fan a good option? For active RAM cooling? Well, is this going to be in a standard case? So, the interesting thing about that, Gigabyte includes a RAM cooler. Gigabyte has a 4-pin RAM cooler. So this mounts to one of the standoffs on the case. So, you know, you'll put it over the motherboard. So it'll probably go like up here. So see this, either this screw or maybe this screw over here. You would attach it and the fan would be blowing air. It looks like you can angle it down or something. Yeah, I think it's like on a pivot here. So the Gigabyte Aorus Master and the Gigabyte Extreme AI Top. I know they don't have the picture for it, but the Extreme AI Top and the Aorus Master include an active fan for RAM cooling. But the original question was about a standoff. So if it's in a case, you know, the standoff can't be super tall. Unless you're talking about an open test bench. Yeah, man, Gigabyte's coming back. Gigabyte didn't do that well in the tier list. But guys, Aorus Master is a solid A tier. And the Extreme AI Top is probably an S tier. Although there's very, very little info on this motherboard. This motherboard has no lane sharing. Meaning you can run all the SSDs on the board and the GPU still runs at full 16. So this is another one, just like the Tomahawk, the Godlike, and all the ASRock boards. This one does not have GPU lane sharing unless you want to run something in the second slot. This is an X8 slot, just like the Tai Chi. So keep that in mind. But other than that, you can still populate all the SSDs on the board, and the GPU will still run at 16 lanes on the AI Top. But this is going to be a very, very expensive motherboard, because this motherboard competes directly with the Crosshair Hero from Asus. But unlike the Hero doesn't have 10 gig LAN, even though it's $700. The Aorus Extreme has dual 10 gig LAN. The difference between the Tai Chi and the Tai Chi Lite is the Tai Chi Lite does not have, so the GPU quick disconnect latch is not on the Lite. The Lite also does not have any RGB. And I think the heatsink, one of them, I think this heatsink is slightly less metal than on the actual Tai Chi. But other than that, I think they're fundamentally the same. So in my mind, for $50, you're getting the GPU disconnect and a better heatsink and RGB. So if you don't think that those three things are worth the $50 upcharge, get the Lite. Otherwise, get the Tai Chi. I think most people would probably want the RGB, and at the very least, they'd want the GPU latch, especially if you're someone like me who uses giant Noctua air coolers, and it's really, really hard to get the GPU out if you have a big air cooler blocking the path. Yeah, quick disconnect on the GPU is kind of a must-have, and that's the reason why I kind of don't talk about the Tai Chi Lite that much, and instead we talk about the Nova, because the Nova is cheaper than the Lite, and it does have the GPU disconnect, and it also has RGB. So Tomahawk doesn't compare to this motherboard. That's a different product. That's a different market segment, guys. I mean, it's just, okay. Technically, it's all AM5, but it's a single chipset. Are you asking which one I would choose? If I would choose between the Nova and the Tomahawk, hands down the Nova, 100% Nova. Yeah, man, and there's a reason why it's so hard to find the Nova, because it's such good value. It's the king of value. That's why it's always out of stock. Like I just told you, if I could choose between spending $350 on the Nova or $300 on a Tomahawk, I would spend $350 on the Nova. Why? Because for that extra $50, I'm getting a second chipset. I'm literally getting a dual chipset motherboard. And it has a backplate. The Tomahawk does not have a backplate. In fact, the Nova is the cheapest. It is the lowest price on a motherboard that still gives you a full backplate. So 100% I would go with the Nova. That isn't even up for discussion. That isn't even a fair comparison. That's like saying, would you buy a Camry or a Corolla? That's how that question, I process that question like, would you rather get a Honda Accord or a Honda Civic? The Nova is a Honda Accord. The Tomahawk is a Honda Civic, guys. Like, these are two different things. These aren't even in the same, like, you know what I'm saying? Like, if the Nova is a Honda Accord, the Tomahawk is a Honda Civic. Well, technically they're different brands. So if Honda is ASRock, then the Honda Accord is the Nova. And the Honda Civic would be the Steel Legend or the Riptide. Those motherboards compete with the Tomahawk. The Tomahawk is like a Ford Focus or something, or like a Toyota Corolla. You know what I'm saying? It's like a completely different thing. In some ways, I wish I would have never found your channel. Then I had you'd expect a goodbye now. Have to redo it all. Well, you know what? We can go through that. I was planning to go through some PC part picker stuff anyway, just to see how much one of these would cost. If someone is trying to budget for the holiday season and they're trying to figure out like what to get, you know, like is the 9800 X3D even a thing here? Oh yeah, it is. Okay. So the 9800 X3D. And then what would I get? Oh yeah, that's good. Thermal right, that's really good. Alright, motherboard. Tai Chi. Man, that's overpriced. What the? What? Carbon? Nova? Nova's impossible to get. Tomahawk would be a good one, but it's like I don't do single chipset. So I would do... You know what? Aorus Elite would be good. Aorus Elite Wi-Fi 7 would be good. For $320. That's cheaper than the Nova. Doesn't have a backplate. Well, see, that's why I want the Tai Chi. I want the Tai Chi because it has a backplate. But man, not at 500. Why? It's $100 upcharge. Somebody is like scalping these. Tai Chi is gone because of me. Maybe I played a role in that. I don't know. I don't think my channel's big enough to have made that much of a difference, guys, to be honest. Like it's not like I'm a large YouTube channel like the big boys, you know. Like I don't really know if I had anything to do with the Nova going out of stock. Someone did point out though that after we talked about the Nova, it just mysteriously went out of stock the next day, and it's like been impossible to find ever since. Tai Chi Light. Tai Chi Light is good, but you know, like you're missing stuff that you get. I don't think the Tai Chi Light has the backplate. But, you know, yeah, it's good. I mean, okay, here's the thing. Like, if I was going to get one of those, it would probably be the Carbon. It's either going to be the Carbon or the Master. Master has the RAM cooling, and it has a very good heatsink. It just has a whole bunch of lane sharing. That's why a lot of people don't like it. A lot of people don't like the Master because it's like, there's tons and tons of lane sharing. Unless you don't care. See, so here's the thing. If I was going to get a 5080 or 5090, I don't care because those are going to be Gen 5 or Gen 5 GPUs anyway. And an X8 Gen 5 GPU is as fast. It's like, that's as much bandwidth as 16 Gen 4. So it's like, I'd probably get this because I know that this, well, it would either be between this and the Carbon, honestly. So they're both $500. Actually, you know what? The X870E-E, the Strix, but a lot of people, for some reason, are unhappy with Asus. Although, I really think the Strix is, technically, it's there's nothing wrong with it. Like, I mean, it's hard to find a fault with the Strix. It's just, it's Asus, it's kind of boring, but I mean, it's like, it does everything. You know what? I'm just gonna get the Carbon. Just say for this build, Carbon. So what is this? This is already over $1,000, and we're cheaping out on getting a $35 air cooler. Although this is a really good air cooler. This is more than enough for this will easily handle an overclocked 9800 X3D. So that's good enough. Choose the memory. Oh, I get asked this question all the time. There. G-Skill, Trident Z5, RGB, 48 gig, 8000, CL40. This is Hynix M-Die. 48 gigabyte, 2 times 40. It's either gonna be this or I would go with like some cheap, like, I don't know, some 6064 gigabyte thing or whatever. RAM active cooling. What? If you play at 4K, go for high clock frequency, not X3D. Why? Okay, choose storage. Okay, for this, it needs to be... Wait, why are these all like hard drives? Where's the... Okay, this one. Wow, that's expensive. Man, Gen 5 is just not... Now is not a good time to get a Gen 5 SSD. These things are super expensive. We're going to have to go Gen 4. Gen 4... to this one. I guess. This is it? Hold on, why am I even building it like this? Is this... What's... Was there like a... Were we trying to hit a certain price target? Because we're not going to match a PS5 Pro. Like, this is already, like, way more... This is too much. This is like... PS5 Pro is like $700. This is like double that. And we haven't even included a graphics card. Well, hold on. Why don't I just... Here, let's do this. Let's build the one that I built on stream the other week. What was in that computer? That one had a... Isn't Deep Cool gone, though? You can't even buy it. Never mind. Okay, well, I'll have to get a 360 that's an equivalent to that. This. See, the problem with PC Part Picker is the parts are not the right price. This isn't even the right price. This isn't even being sold correctly. Out of stock. Amazon, it's being sold by a scalper. Someone's trying to make $100 off of this. Was that the RAM? That was the RAM that was in there, right? Yeah, that one. What was the SSD that's in there? I don't even know what SSD's in there. Wait. No, it... I think it's P3 Plus. I think it's this one. I could be completely wrong on that. You know what? I think it's actually some Micro Center inland something. Inland TN 470. I actually have no idea what's in there. I think it's a crucial P3 Plus is I think what I put in there. 2 terabyte, this one. That's in there. And then there's also a there's like a SATA SSD. Inland SATA Professional 2 terabyte. This one. Inland Platinum, there's one of those in there. There's also another NVMe in there. I think it's like a cheap Inland... Why am I unable to remember what's actually in there? Inland Prime? This? No. Premium? I don't know what's in my own computer that I built. I guess that's all that's in there. No, there's definitely Inland something in there. I think one of these are in there. I don't know. There's like this. There's 4 SSDs. There's 4 and the SATA. Inland. I'm just gonna pick something at random. I don't even know what's in there anymore. Like it's 1 terabyte, some cheap thing. 1, 2, 3. We need one more. There's one more. Or is there an Intel? Is Intel 670p? Is this even still available? Whatever. Just That's a scalper. That isn't even worth that much. Inland... Put another one of these. Whatever. Okay. So 1, 2, 3... It doesn't even... These are all wrong, by the way. I think there's a crucial... I don't know what any of this stuff is. I just put those in there because I know that I have 4 M.2s in there. And then there's this 1 platinum. So 1, 2, 3, 4... We have 5 SSDs. So 1 SATA and 4 NVMe in this build. Technically, this is not the correct motherboard. So if I'm going to go off of what is actually there... And this is being sold by a scalper, so that doesn't even matter. So, okay. We'll just put this there for now. 1, 2, 3. Okay, what else is here? The video card. RTX 4080 Super. And it has to be the Founders Edition. Otherwise, I'm just going to change it. There's no Founders Edition? Wow. Okay, well, forget about the 4080 then. RX 7900 XTX Red Devil. Technically, it's a limited edition. We'll just put this in there. Okay. And then the case was NZXT-H7 Flow 2024. Yeah, that one. The power supply was a Corsair. What was it? 850M. RM850EX. This one. Why are their prices so dumb? I'm trying to look at what this computer is really $3,000? Wait, this computer is that much money? How is it that much money? Oh, because the GPU is like $1,000. What? There's that much? Man, this adds up pretty quick. This is it. Okay, monitor. LG Ultra Gear. This one? Yeah, this is it. This is the monitor. This is the monitor for Monster Hunter Wilds. 240 hertz 4K. Yeah, that's it. Add that. Okay, what is this price? $4,366.84. That is a lot. Man. Okay, that is the computer that was built last week. You think another SSD would be a good idea? Okay. Well, the thing is, the motherboard maxes out at 4. I mean, I could put like 3 more SATA inlands. They're on sale. In fact, if there's anything that I'm going to get for like Black Friday, it's probably going to be more of these, if I'm being honest. I'm probably going to buy SATA 2 terabyte SSDs. Like, seriously. Seriously. Get them before they're gone. That's the way I look at it. These are nice to have if you're someone who is into overclocking and you're going to do like a test bench and you're going to swap out motherboards or whatever. Like, it's much more convenient to use a SATA SSD because all you got to do is plug in the SATA cable to the motherboard. You don't have to mess with the heat sinks and all this stuff. Now, with the newer motherboards, the nice thing is that they're toolless, so they're easier to install M.2. In the past, you had to do the screwdriver thing and not lose the tiny little screw. But still, I mean, this is good. This is all you need if you're just doing, like, Cinebench R23 runs, you know, for those world record things. So, yeah, I'm thinking of getting, at some point, at least, like, another one of these. But, yeah, like, this is the computer. This is the computer. This is the gaming computer. Man, that's a lot of money for a gaming computer. I did not realize it was that much. You know, really what makes it super expensive, though, is the monitor and the graphics card. Let's remove the graphics card. Let's remove the monitor. Look at what happens. Oh, well, that's still a lot. What? Okay, well, the motherboard and the CPU is like $1,000. And the RAM makes it go over. So this stuff right here is already like more than 50% of everything. I guess all the storage drives are what's bringing the price up. Use my phone as the keyboard and mouse. Oh, there's no keyboard and mouse. Play in 2K resolution. Well, no, you can still get like a cheap 4K monitor. The only reason why that monitor was so expensive is because it's an OLED. If it wasn't an OLED, it wouldn't be that much. It's a 240 hertz OLED. So that's why it's that expensive. And it's 4K. This is ridiculous. So, okay. See, okay. Back on track. The thing is, you have to understand, if someone is doing an upgrade now, this is why I tell them, do not buy a graphics card right now. Save money. Reuse the old graphics card. Reuse the old power supply. Reuse the computer case. Although some people want to upgrade their case because some people are on an ancient case that doesn't even have USB-C on the front. So I totally understand why now would be a time to be looking at a case. Okay, and maybe this is excessive, the M.2 stuff, and the SATA, most people probably won't use that. So realistically, if we're going to trim this down so that it's more in line with what people are actually going to buy, one SSD, see, there. That's about the price of the RTX 4090. You're buying everything but the 4090. Oh, well, if you're going from a laptop to well, okay. Then the only thing that we need to add is a power supply. And the power supply, like I said here, right there. Hold on, what's a good one? What's a good one besides Corsair? I know Corsair's good. This one's good. Yeah, I have one of these. This is the power supply that is powering the Intel Core Ultra computer. So I have one of these for the Intel Core Ultra that we built last month. So that's what I'm using in that one. That's a good one. 142. Although the course, that's a 1000 watt. This looks too small, but I guess this is okay. New NZXT. This one. Oh, wait. This one. The NZXT C1000. You mean this? Yeah, okay, go with that. There. It's 150. So it's like the cost of a 4090 without buying a 4090. You get the case. Okay, I don't know. Like NZXT power supply, NZXT case. The H7 Flow is a very good case for airflow. So you can fit a 420 in the front. You can fit a 360 on the top. So this is a good one. You guys saw the live stream build. I built the 9800X3D with this case. It was very easy to build in. I actually really like the case. I mean, it's pretty good. It doesn't have a reset button, though. So if you want a reset button, don't get this. This one has the 12 volt thing. Oh, you mean dual? Oh. Okay. So, well, that's going to drive the price up significantly. Those power supplies are very expensive. I mean, this is good. And technically, like, you don't have, like, this RAM, it's possible to save money on going with different RAM instead of this DDR5 8000. This is 48 gigabytes at 8000. This is, the reason why I put this here is because this is what I've actually built the computer. I mean, we're actually using this RAM in the computer right now. So, that's why that's here. What makes this the magic memory is because this runs at 8000 at a low 1.35 volts. Magic high speed at low voltage. Overkill, Be Quiet, Dark Power Pro, 1600 watt. Yeah, you don't need that for this sort of thing. So, yeah. I mean, okay. So, I would say this. It's possible. Let's try to trim this down a bit. Let's save some money. Let's say if somebody forget about the stupid RAM and this cooler. Get a cheap cooler, save money. Check it out. RGB. You want RGB on an air cooler? $35. Memory. Let's get some Trident Z5 Neos. Let's get, where's that Neo? Yeah. Check it out. Trident Z5 Neo. Neo means Expo. So if you want Expo instead of XMP, you look for the Neo from G-Skill. That's like 105. Let's see. They got some interesting ones here. There's actually a 6400 kit, but that's going to be really hard to do. What is this? This is cheap. $92? Oh, this is Samsung. No. Okay. See, the other thing too, you have to know how to eyeball the RAM. You got to know how to look at the RAM, and you immediately know, is it Hynix? Is it Micron? Is it Samsung? I can look at a memory kit, and I have the, like, I have that, it's like if I'm a video game character, I have that intellect ability. I can look at a memory, and I already know, okay, this is Hynix. I look at this one, okay, this is Samsung. You know, like, you have to intuitively develop the skill. This is how you can tell if someone is experienced building PCs versus someone who is relatively new at building PCs. Like, I can straight up look, and I'm like, okay, that's Hynix. Okay, no, that one's Samsung. Oh, this one's Micron. You know, like, that's kind of thing. So if we look at this, let's look at this one. G-Skill Trident Z5 Neo. Neo means AMD Expo. So I know this is for Ryzen. That doesn't mean you can't use it with Intel. You can totally use this with Intel. Likewise, I mean, everybody already knows. Anyone who's been building PCs for like 20 years or more knows you can use Intel XMP RAM with AMD Ryzen. It works totally fine, no problems. But a lot of people don't really know that you can actually run AMD Expo RAM on Intel, and that will also work totally fine, no issue. So this is meant to go with Ryzen, but that doesn't mean you can't use this with Intel. So just FYI, this works with either one, but it is designed to go with AMD. But that doesn't mean you can't use it with Intel. It's kind of like when you buy a car, the car comes with factory OEM tires. Those tires are designed to go with that car. That doesn't mean you can't use those tires on a different car that has different OEM tires. It will work, provided the wheels are the correct size. So it's that kind of thing. It's the same sort of situation. So this one, this is Hynix. So this one's actually not that bad. What's the price on this? Is expensive though. Oh, this is 64 gigabytes. So 64 gigabytes at under $200. Okay, that's kind of the price point. So 32 gigabytes for like 105 or so. So this top one here, this is CL30. I immediately look at that number, CL30. That means Hynix memory. This is Hynix memory. That's a good price, but that's 32 gigabytes. So we're doing, if we're gonna do 32 gigabytes, that's actually probably the easiest way to go. Will be that very first one right there. Let's look at some others actually. So let's look at Corsair. Corsair Vengeance. Corsair Vengeance. This one's sub. CL36. I smell me some Samsung. I smell Samsung. I can smell it from a mile away. Oh no, it's not Samsung though. Ooh, okay. Wait a minute. Why is this why is it like that? What? This is like weird. Kilo, sub to the channel. Thanks for the sub. This is not Samsung, but it is very, very loose timing. I've never seen it like that loose. 44, 36, 44, 44, 96. So this is definitely Hynix, but it is a weird looking version of Hynix. If I had to guess, that's most likely Hynix, but that is a really weird Hynix. Strange timings on that one. Is that low voltage though? What was the voltage on that? 1.4 volt. Okay, it's definitely Hynix, but like I would not get this. The G-Skill one was way better. The timings on that was way better than this Corsair. Hold on. Let's look at what is another one? V-Color? V-Color Manta? Or V-Color X Sky RG. This one's $90. CL36. Okay, this is some weird memory. Like, why is it so low? Like, what? A-Data XPG Lancer. This one has no RGB. Oh, CL30. Yeah, I know what that is. So, yeah, 1.35. Yeah, this is, I wish I could see the sub-timing or the other primary timings. This is probably Hynix also because it's CL30. The easiest way to tell is, and it's with high accuracy, is if you look at it, let's just go back to the G-Skill because I think the G-Skill one was the best one. Trident Z5 Neo. Like, the easiest way to tell... Actually, let's try to find some Samsung memory. Flare X5. Maybe this one? No, this is also Hynix. Well, anyway, what I'm going to tell you is... All you got to do is look at these four numbers. If the first number is different from the second number... and the memory speed is like 6,000 or above, it's Hynix. If the first number and the second number are the same number, like for example, if they're both 36, like this one here, if we go to this one, DDR5 5600, R-Drops just subscribe to the channel as well. Why is this thing so small? I don't understand what happened to that. Thanks for the sub. So if it's notice it says CL36. And the second number is also 36. So 36, 36, 36, 89. This is Samsung memory. Now, it's not always the case, but the only type of memory that's going to not follow this general rule is very, very old DDR5 from like way back. Like we're talking like Alder Lake era DDR5. And if they still made those batches for whatever reason for like 2.5 years, you could end up with memory that has like the first number and the second number being the same, and it still ends up being Hynix. But generally speaking, if the first number and the second number are different, then it's Hynix. If the first number and the second number are the exact same number, it's Samsung. It could also be Micron, but Micron typically won't go to high speeds. But this one, DDR5 5600, CL363636, that is Samsung. Let's try to find another example. So I want to find an example that's like DDR5 6000. Oh, okay, 6000 CL36. Yeah, this one. This is also Samsung. DDR5 6000 CL36 36 36. You see what I'm saying? 36 36 36. That is Samsung memory. So if the first number and the second number are the exact same number, there's a high chance that it's Samsung memory. Okay, also, if the memory is non-binary memory. Now, that people are probably like, what are you talking about? Okay, non-binary memory means that the memory is not in your standard like 8 gigabyte, 16 gigabyte, 32 gigabyte, 64 gigabyte. It means it's going to be in either 24 gigabyte DIMM size or 48 gigabyte DIMM size. These are the newer types. So if you have, for example, DDR5 8000, which is on a 48 gigabyte kit. So let's do Trident Z5 or DDR5 8000. Yeah, like this one. If it is 24 gigabyte or 48 gigabyte, it is Hynix M die. Hynix M die. So all this new non-binary memory, which is like either a 24 gigabyte DIMM, so that means the total capacity would be 48 gigabytes, or 2 times 48 for a total of 96 gigabytes. Those are going to be all Hynix M die. That's another way to recognize it. Now, if it's challenging if you have the standard like 2x16, 2x32. Typically, if it's dual rank, so like 2x32, it is most likely going to be Hynix M die. But if you have 2x16, it's very hard to tell. It could either be Hynix A die, Hynix M die. It's very hard to tell. But it's pretty easy to tell if it's like Samsung or Hynix. Like, that's easy to tell. What do you think about the Neo 8000 at 1.4? Wait, there's a Neo 8000 at 1.4? Where is that? Oh. Whoa, what is this? Okay, this is a cool one. This is cool. This is the new one that is meant to go with the 9800X3D. I didn't even know this thing existed. This must be brand new. This is Expo DDR5 8000 at CL38? What? 1.45 volts? This is Hynix A die. I'm pretty sure this is Hynix A die. Now, this could be Hynix M die, but the chances are this is probably Hynix A die. Man, this is new. This is the stuff that, like, literally, like when AMD announced the 9950X and the 9700X, we got them here. 99, you got 9950X, 9700X, you know, Zen 5. They had a whole PowerPoint slide on Expo 8000. They were talking about DDR5 8000 and how they're like, oh, we're going to have Expo and it's going to run at 8000 and it's wonderful. It's a nice day outside. And then everyone was talking Zen 5%. But this is it, guys. This is an example of an Expo kit. This is probably Hynix A die, because it's running at very high voltage, 1.45 volts. Very low latency. CL38, which is insane. That's why the voltage is super high, because of CAS latency 38. If this was CAS latency 40, this could run at 1.4, maybe even 1.35. But this is Hynix A die. I'm fairly certain there's a high chance this is Hynix A die, which is harder and harder to come by these days. Yeah, these are what's the 30? Yeah, 38, man. 38. Wow. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. This is the good stuff. This is the good stuff. Thanks for bringing that to my attention, because I didn't even know this stuff existed. I thought this was coming out next year. I didn't even know it was out. Now it's expensive, but the thing is, it's not like super expensive though. Oh, you know why? Yeah, it's pricey though. See, the thing is, this will be very easy to overclock. I mean, it's already kind of clocked really high to begin with, especially that CL38. So if you're someone who is interested in this RAM, just know that you need a high-end motherboard to be able to run this RAM. This RAM is not going to run on a $200 motherboard. This RAM, there's a good chance this won't even run on a $300 motherboard. You're probably going to need a high-end flagship motherboard to support this type of memory, because this is very high-end memory. Just so people know, like this is super high end. The main thing, this is definitely for people who are wanting to overclock, and this is strictly for a gaming machine, because 32 gigabytes today is kind of like the minimum that I would do, honestly. This is good for an 8-core CPU though, like an 8-core CPU, 32 gigabytes of memory, that's fine. Now, for a 16-core, like a 9950X or a 9950X3D, I would not recommend 32 gigabytes. I would recommend either 48 gigabytes minimum if you want to run at 8000, or realistically, you should be on 64 gigabytes if you're using your machine and you don't want contention of resources between the cores, so for a lot of the productivity apps. But that's if you're doing productivity apps. So, yeah, this is good overclocker's memory, I guess. That's good stuff. I didn't even know that was out. Okay. What's this other one? What is this? What is this? Wait a minute. What? This is Expo 48 gig at 8000? Man, this stuff's good too. See, okay, this is actually what I would recommend for most people. Especially if you're going to go with, like, if you're someone who's planning to get a 9950X3D next year, I really think that 48 gigabytes is a better choice. So, I mean, yeah, this is actually good stuff. What is this? I didn't even know this existed. So here's some more really good RAM. This is basically the AMD Expo version of the magic memory that I've constantly recommended. The memory that I've been pairing up all this time is Intel XMP 3.0 memory for my AMD Ryzen computer. But this is basically the, like, legit Expo version of this memory. The one thing that's different, though, and I'd have to double check. I'm pretty sure PC Part Picker is accurate on this. The timings are the same exact timings as this XMP RAM. The one thing that sticks out, though, is they're claiming 1.4 volts. The memory that I have recommended runs this exact same speed, 8000, and these exact same timings at 1.35 volts. So this is very interesting RAM. I kind of like the stuff that I have here better than this one because this is doing it at 1.35, whereas this one says 1.4. Generally, the lower the voltage, the better. So for a lot of different reasons, namely heat and power. But RAM doesn't use that much electricity, but the thing is, if you're clocking your RAM at higher voltage, then that means it's going to run hotter. So if you're gaming and the case is heating up because the GPU is throwing a lot of heat into the air in the case, then, it's harder to handle the memory because, it's going to generate more heat because it's running at 1.4 volts. So I personally like 1.35 volts better for 8000. But, this is interesting. So there's an Expo option. Technically speaking, this is like the only RAM that I'd probably consider, honestly, if I wanted to buy an Expo kit. If that was not a dual rank DIMM. Okay, let's talk about 4 sticks of memory. What if you want to run 4 sticks of memory? So what I would recommend, first of all, single rank DDR5 6000. So that's going to be the maximum speed. So 4 of these would work. So two of these kits for a total of 64 gigabytes. You can run 64 gigabytes across 4 sticks at 6000. That will work on X870 and X870E. So if you're someone who really likes 4 sticks of memory, although you're probably going to want RGB, probably 4 of these. So 2 of these kits. This is the Expo stuff, CL30. 1.35 volts. That's good. It's low voltage. If I'm going to run 4 sticks of memory, I want low voltage, and it's not going to go above 6000. Forget about overclocking beyond 6000. So technically, 4 sticks at 6000 is already like a massive, massive overclock. So, yeah, 2 of these. That works. This works. I can do 4 sticks with this. The Tomahawk can probably do that. The Tai Chi will 100% do that. The Hero will do that. So, yeah, all those high-end boards, Carbon, Master, the Extreme, all of them will be able to handle 4 sticks like this. This is single rank. Single rank, 4 sticks is much, much easier than dual rank. So if you're someone who wants dual rank, DDR5, again, 6000. Do they even have like a 4x, what's 4x24? What's this? 4x24. And this is CL40. Oh, okay, this is Micron. Okay, but this is interesting. So this is some very interesting RAM from Corsair. Corsair Vengeance RGB, 96 gigabytes, 4 times 24. DDR5 6000 CL40. This will work on Zen 5. This kit will work with Zen 5 at that speed with this amount. This is Micron. And Micron actually works very well with Ryzen. Unless you're trying to run high speeds. Doesn't really go beyond 6000. That's where they cap out. But this stuff, it's not fast. CL40 is very loose for 6000. That's how I know it's Micron. Also, 40-40-40-77 is a JEDEC profile. And Micron, and it's 1.25 volts. This smells like Micron RAM. Like, I can look at it and I can smell the stench. This is straight up Micron. That's not bad. If you want to run 4 sticks, if you want RGB, and you want that sweet spot 6000, you know, you just like the look of 4 sticks, you don't care, you're still going to get that 1-to-1 ratio, that's fine. This will work. But yeah, that is some Micron RAM. So, and Micron, believe it or not, Micron trains really quick, and Micron is very stable. It's very good. Well, but it's stable because it's not really hitting very high speed. So forget about overclocking with this. Overclocking, 4 sticks, 6000 is already an overclock. Just FYI, that's already a massive, massive overclock. This is more of an overclock than like 2 sticks at 8000. Just FYI. Stock speed for 4 sticks is 3600. That's the maximum supported speed. If you want a lot of RAM and you don't want RGB, what is this stuff? This is even more expensive though. This doesn't have RGB. It's 4 sticks. This is Hynix. That's why it's more expensive. Oh, okay. This one will outperform the Micron. It doesn't have RGB. It's the same 96 gigs. DDR5 6000, but it's CL30. CL30 is much better than CL40 at 6000. And this will work 1-to-1. Yeah, that means it has both. That means that all that means, if it says Intel XMP and AMD Expo, that just means that it has the SPD profiles. Both of them are in there. You just ordered the Neo 8000 48GB. Yeah, that'll be very interesting to see how well that does compared to the 1.35 volt non-Neo. I mean, what if it only says one? If it says only one, then it's only one. It doesn't matter. It's still going to work on either AMD or Intel. Okay, so the Corsair. So if you're someone who really, really wants 4 sticks of memory, and the reason why I'm emphasizing the 4 sticks of memory, because I know there's a bunch of people who like the look of 4 sticks of RAM. It looks cool. They can, especially with all the RGB, especially with the liquid cooling. So yeah, like this stuff right here, the Corsair Dominator Titanium. This is CL30. That means this is SK Hynix. So this is Hynix in a 4-DIMM kit. Oh, that reminds me. I don't know. I have not yet seen Samsung non-binary memory. That means I have not seen Samsung 24 gig DIMM or 48 gig DIMM. I have only seen Micron. Micron was the first one to offer 24 gig or 48 gig DIMMs last year. Second was Hynix. And Hynix came out the door swinging with those 48 gigabyte 8000 kits, like the one that I have right here. This is a Hynix, 1.35 volt 8000 48 gigabyte kit. So I call it the magic memory because it does 8000 at 1.35 volts. So Hynix has that out. I don't know what Samsung's doing because Samsung, they're like, people don't really like their RAM on DDR5 at least. They don't really do super high speeds. They run really, really hot at higher as you bump up the voltage compared to Hynix. So it's just kind of weird. So although if you're running JDEC, Micron gives you the best like gig, or I guess what is it? Gig per dollar per gig, whatever that metric is. Like Micron gives you the best, like the amount of RAM that you get at the lowest price. Micron is probably the way to go if you want to run 4 sticks of memory. But if you want to run with the tightest timings, this is a very good choice, although this is very expensive. But it's 96 gigabytes, and it's 4 sticks, and it's single rank. So I've been actually considering running this kind of setup on a lot of my systems. But you could do 2 times 48, and that would probably work just as well, if not probably higher speed or better in the future, but I don't know. The V-Color DDR5 Manta. Yes, it would. You're a little confused about these new CUDIMM. Oh, CUDIMM, man. Forget about CUDIMM. CUDIMM is too expensive right now for what it offers. It doesn't really offer a performance uplift, and it's expensive. You have to wait for that to mature. That's like trying to buy DDR5 like 3 years ago or 2 years ago. It's not worth it right now. You want to wait for that technology to mature. Yeah, that is true. CUDIMM is available, but it's pricey and it's not high density. It's just not really good value right now. You mean 2 times 48? V-Color DDR5 Manta is for $200. Yeah, but what is that amount? Like, what is that? V-Color. Oh, I gotta get rid of this. V-Color Manta. You mean this one? X Sky. X Prism? What are we talking about? This? See, I don't like the voltage. This is Hynix. This is also a speed that you don't really benefit from. So, because unless you're running like F clock at what, 1800 or something, it's like I would avoid it. What about the 6000 one? What is this? X Sky. Oh, you're saying 8200. Do they even have it on this website? This one's 8000. 1.45 volts. See, I already don't like it. Voltage is super high. You can get lower voltage at the exact same speed. So it's like, Yeah, forget it. CUDIMM is not worth it right now. You're paying like extra for like really nothing. Also, what I've seen is the CUDIMM also runs at very high voltage, which is not a good thing if you want to keep the RAM at a cooler temperature. So once RAM goes above 60 degrees, like if you're running high ambient temperature because you're gaming for like 3+ hours, it's gonna have trouble with stability unless you're running active cooling on the memory. Yeah, CUDIMM, no, there's really no benefit to that. CUDIMM is not... Yeah, no. I would avoid that stuff. You can find much better deals on the standard DDR5. $285K. Wait, what? We'll do standard DDR5. Yeah, standard DDR5 is the way to go, especially if you're trying to run high density. Like what? Let me see. CUDIMM, is that even on here? It doesn't even show up on here. So I guess PC Part Picker hasn't added the CUDIMM stuff yet. That stuff, from what I've seen, you can't really get higher density, and also who knows how that behaves with 4 sticks. If you wanted to do 4 sticks. So it's too early to say much about that until next year. So to me, first of all, look, if I was going to test CUDIMM, I'd be testing it on the Intel platform because the Intel platform has the support. Now, AMD currently, like somebody said in the chat just now, currently on AMD, it'll run in a bypass mode. So it will not actually use the clock redriver. There will have to be some kind of BIOS update in the future to actually have the memory controller interact with the clock on the memory DIMM. So that's why there isn't really much of a reason to consider it right now. The other thing too is, like I said, it's expensive, high voltage, and it's not providing what I expected it to provide. And what I wanted to see from CUDIMM is higher density at those higher speeds. So, like, for example, give me 96 gigabytes at 8,000. If CUDIMM can offer 96 gigabytes at 8,000, now we're talking. Until I see that, I don't care about it. It is completely irrelevant. So, that's my opinion on CUDIMM right now. Yeah, so on AMD, CUDIMM is only for, right, it's only for bragging rights. Like, if you install it on the current AMD motherboard, it'll only, okay, MSI will turn it on, and it'll let you configure it, but it's all going to be manual configuration. And on all the others, I don't even know if the others even work. Like, Asus, Gigabyte, ASRock, like, if you install the CUDIMM on one of them, like, I don't even know what those motherboards will do, because they don't even have support for those modules right now. Like, MSI will turn it on, it'll boot up, it'll post with the CUDIMM, and it'll let you set the speed manually, but it's going to run in a clock bypass, so it's like no different from regular DDR5. So there isn't really much of a reason to mess with it right now. Until that technology gets more mature, it's a big nothing burger at this point. And also, the benefit of that was higher speed, but also potentially higher density. And, like, because right now, the way I look at it is if you're running 4 sticks of memory, you're capped at like 6,000. If you're running 2 sticks of memory, you're capped around like 8,000, realistically. Like, for actual proper ratios. You can go higher, but there's like literally no benefit because you have to mess with F clock and all the other stuff. So it kind of defeats the purpose of CUDIMM. Like, it's like, okay, if CUDIMM, but see, like, if CUDIMM, all I need CUDIMM to do is give me 96 gigabytes at 8,000. Now we're talking. Until I see that, I don't care. Like, I literally don't care about it because it's like, why would I spend that much money for like 32 gigs of memory that can run it? It's like, really? Like, I'm not interested in that. Okay, if it's at least 48 gigabytes, maybe, but even then, it should be clocking higher than 8,000. Like, significantly higher. So, CUDIMM has already been done. Again, CUDIMM is less voltage. Does CUDIMM help with 4 sticks of memory? That's the other question. Like, does it actually help with 4 sticks? Because 48 gigabytes is single rank, 64 gigabytes is dual rank. And there's also no 64 gigabyte that runs at 8,000. That's the other reason. Because it's dual rank. See, and that's what I'm saying. Like, if we could see CUDIMM provide 64 gigabytes at 8,000, now it actually looks more interesting. Should help with quad channel is Threadripper. We don't have access to quad channel on standard desktop. I don't know if the memory controller is less stressed. It's not the memory, it's the memory. I mean, it's not the memory controller that benefits from CUDIMM, it's the actual memory chips themselves that benefit from the redriver. Well, now that I think about it, maybe it goes both ways, but no, you think about it, it won't help both ways. It's only from the CPU to the RAM. CUDIMM helps from CPU to memory, not from memory to CPU. I mean, maybe it does, but partially, but realistically it doesn't. And the reason why is because you got to think about how it actually travels. So, when you have... I guess we don't need any of this stuff anymore. Let's get rid of all of this. You have the CPU. You have the memory. 1, 2, 3, 4. So, what is CUDIMM? CUDIMM means that on each of these DIMMs, there is a little circuit that is a clock redriver, also known as a regenerator. It regenerates the signal received from the memory controller. So the memory controller is over here. or whatever. We'll just say he's like right here. He's in the I/O die. This is the I/O die. This is the CCD. This is a 9800X3D. So it's a single CCD. We have the 9800X3D. We have, well, okay, this is a bad example. We should probably just use an Intel CPU as an example because this one's just going to bypass. But anyway, let's just get rid of the name. So the point is, when the signal is sent, it starts off really good. It starts off really solid. But as it traverses across the motherboard on that long exodus, that long journey of nanoseconds to traverse to the memory controller, it arrives. But you can see that as it traverses the long journey, the long pilgrimage from the CPU all the way to the memory, the signal can become less than ideal. It's not terrible because you can still clearly say this is a 0, this is a 1, this is a 0, this is a 1, this is a 0, this is a 1, zeros and ones. It's all binary data. So we have bits, 0 or 1. We're transmitting zeros and ones in a long stream of data continuously. So we are doing a copy or we're doing a write, whatever. So this is a write operation. It doesn't really matter. So we're sending something to the memory. What this clock redriver does is it regenerates the signal. So if the signal, if we zoom in and look in here, what is happening, this is the clock redriver. Here is the kind of like deformed memory signal from outside, from the motherboard. And the clock cleans it up and makes it a nice, shiny, new signal. That is what CUDIMM does. That's what CUDIMM does. So what benefits from this? The memory benefits from this. The CPU doesn't actually benefit from this. Now, obviously, the CPU will benefit because this can potentially allow the memory to clock at much higher speeds because the clock is essentially a pair of prescription lenses for the memory module, so they can actually see the signal more clearly now. Hence something known as the eye diagram. But these are concepts that are way beyond what someone who wants to build a gaming PC needs to understand. Anyway, this is what CUDIMM does, guys. It cleans it up. It cleans up the signal from the motherboard. So, if you have a low-end motherboard, like let's say you bought a cheap $200, it's weird to say $200 is cheap, but years ago $200 was not cheap for a motherboard. Anyway, if you buy a cheap $200 B650 motherboard, you know, if you get one of those low-end motherboards, those low-end motherboards can create noise like this. It can manifest as blurry looking zeros and ones. So by the time let's say I don't want to pick on any particular vendor, but let's just use the Gigabyte Eagle as an example. Gigabyte Eagle or Asus Prime or MSI. Oh, what's the cheap MSI board? The Dash P or something, the Pro Dash P or whatever, or the ASRock Pro RS. You know, like these cheaper, lower end, entry level motherboards. The X870 motherboards, not the X870E, the X870 boards. So Gigabyte Eagle and all this stuff. So these 6-layer PCB boards. Those motherboards tend to have this kind of behavior where the trace layout, the wire will have more either noise or capacitance. Basically, it's going to manifest as electrical noise. Now, with good motherboard design, they can mitigate that. And with a super high-end motherboard, or with like lots of layers and good engineering in how they place the wire trace outs and make them independent of each other, they can get very good, something called signal to noise ratio. And the signal to noise ratio, the higher the signal to noise ratio, the better the signal is when it's received by the memory, or when the memory transmits back to the memory or to the IMC, it'll be a better signal on the way back. So this is the reason why a higher end motherboard like the Hero or the Godlike or the Master or the Carbon or the Taichi, this is the reason why overclockers use the high-end motherboards or the CUDIMM motherboards. There is a reason why they do this. Have you guys ever wondered how come the overclockers never use a Gigabyte Eagle, or they never use an Asus TUF or a Prime? I wonder why they never use those motherboards. You know what I'm saying? Like, how come when Steve and Joe did their overclocking special with the 9800X3D with LN2, how come they didn't use a Gigabyte Eagle? I wonder why they didn't use that motherboard. You know, why did they use a high-end Asus Hero? There's probably a reason why they did that. A technical reason. And the reason is memory trace layout is superior because the signal to noise ratio is much better on a higher end motherboard. If you have a low end motherboard, the signal will look like this. Maybe this is an exaggeration, but you can see like it becomes kind of messy. If you have a high-end motherboard, a flagship like the Godlike is so pristine. It is sharp edges, no aliasing, excellent signal-to-noise ratio. It maintains the solid shape of those square pulses all the way across. Hence the reason why MSI advertises over 9,000 on the DDR5, because the Godlike X870E Godlike is a 10-layer PCB. This is a 10-layer motherboard. They isolate the wires between the layers in such a way that they can maintain super crystal clear signal quality. If you're someone who listens to music on low-end, cheap $15 headphones, you're going to have a different user experience than someone listening on a high-end Sennheiser or JBL or Sony or whatever. There's going to be a difference in the experience because the fidelity, the signal-to-noise ratio is so much more clear. And that is the reason why the higher-end motherboards can achieve higher memory speeds. So all this stuff with CUDIMM, so going back to the original discussion about CUDIMM, what does CUDIMM do? CUDIMM, in theory, should be able to help achieve even higher memory speeds because it cleans up a messy signal. But if the signal's not messy to begin with, I don't think there's going to be that much benefit. However, where it could help is if you have a low-end entry-level motherboard like a Gigabyte Eagle. Not trying to hate on Gigabyte, there's nothing wrong with the Eagle. I'm just saying for someone who is trying to tune and get the absolute best memory performance, an Eagle or a Prime or a TUF is not going to be the best choice. However, in the future, when CUDIMM works the way it's supposed to, in theory, you can buy a cheap motherboard and you can pair it up with expensive CUDIMM and run decent speeds, like 8,000, for example. So that is effectively what CUDIMM is supposed to do. So right now, for most people, you don't need to worry about CUDIMM. It doesn't even work on AMD right now the way it's supposed to. In fact, MSI is the only one that it supports it, but MSI will boot up with it, and you can set the speed like normal, but it's not going to leverage the clock driver until there is actual BIOS updates that allow the memory controller to communicate with the actual clock read driver. So right now, it's a big nothing burger. It's not worth looking into until sometime, probably a whole year from now, I would guess. But yeah, that's basically what CUDIMM does. This probably needs to be its own YouTube video because there's probably a whole bunch of people that don't even know what CUDIMM does, and we literally just explained in detail what CUDIMM actually does. So, yeah, that's basically it for the DDR5 stuff, guys. So pretty much 2 speeds, 6,000, or if you're gonna do 4 sticks, single rank, 6,000 typically works on a decent motherboard. Otherwise, if you're doing 2 sticks and you want to go really, really fast, you can get 8,000, provided you have a good motherboard that provides a good signal-to-noise ratio. So anyway, that is that. All right, so that, I mean, I think that's pretty much it. I guess we spent like 2 hours going over like PC parts and stuff. Was there anything in the news that I was going to discuss here? Let me just look here real quick. There's like some news on Bitcoin or whatever. Sometimes that kind of makes me nervous because that means that the crypto bros could come back and start buying up GPUs, not for Bitcoin, but to mine altcoins and then convert that into Bitcoin. So we may see a return of the crypto stuff next year. At least the mining might actually catch on. Maybe there's going to be an altcoin that people start mining and then they just convert it into Bitcoin on the back end. So they start generating Bitcoin for themselves because the price of Bitcoin is going up really, really high right now. So there's that going on, and that could mean that the worst thing that could happen, guys. Like, here's the thing. Let me bring this article up here. So, Bitcoin strategic reserve worth $700 million in Pennsylvania might become reality if bill passes. I don't know what the bill is about, but anyway, the point is, Bitcoin is going up again, which means crypto is coming back. We are on the eve of a crypto wave. It's already started. The danger for the gamers is there is a new GPU generation on the horizon from NVIDIA and AMD, and possibly Intel as well. And if it lines up, let's say somebody somewhere invents a new crypto coin, an altcoin, they build up hype, people find out, oh, it's super profitable, I can make like $10 a day mining XYZ coin or whatever. Then they go and start doing it. Then more people start doing it. Then they got to buy GPUs and start building up GPU mining farms again. Oh, and what do they do with this new altcoin? They don't keep it. They turn it into Bitcoin. They just like exchange it for Bitcoin. So they're either making their money in Bitcoin or they're just like generating, like whatever, passive income, as they say, just mining this altcoin. So if that happens again, the danger is that when the 50 series launches, all the gamers will be unable to buy a graphics card because all the crypto people will be buying up the graphics cards on the back end because they have all these like connections with the actual AIB partners. This was something that was happening in 2021. So I don't need to go into that right now, but just know that the large firms that do Bitcoin mining, and they mine a bunch of altcoins and they convert it into either Bitcoin or whatever, like they could go to like MSI or it used to be EVGA or whoever, XFX, Sapphire. I'm not going to leave anybody out. Zotac, PNY, all you name it, they go to them. They're like, hey man, I'll buy, like 5,000 graphics cards or whatever. Like you don't even have to sell to like a store. I'll just buy them off of you right now. So they'll be like, okay, you got a deal, like whatever. So they're going to sell off the stuff on the back end. Guess what? That hits the supply chain. So the gamers won't be able to buy a graphics card. And you know who's also going to be out there looking for GPUs? You guessed it. Everybody's favorite, scalpers. Scalpers. Yeah, they're coming back in droves. It's like someone says Bitcoin, light bulbs turn on, everybody starts coming out of the woodwork. All the crypto bros, all the scalpers are coming in fast, and all the botnets gonna buy up all the cards off of BestBuy.com, buy up all the Amazon stock, buy up all the Newegg stock. Here we go. Here we go. You know it's coming. When you hear about Bitcoin going up, Bitcoin's going to 100K, they say. And you know what that means? The light bulb on the scalper's brain like turns on and like, business opportunity. Ooh, business opportunity. So there could be a lot of that next year. And that's very unfortunate, but that could definitely happen. It could definitely happen. We are running into a crypto wave, and on the horizon, the 50 series is on the way. It's literally like Goku flying on Snake Way as fast as he can, but he's too slow, and by the time he gets there, it's going to be too late. All the gamers are going to die out because Vegeta and Nappa are going to annihilate all of them. Nappa is a scalper, and Vegeta is a crypto bro, and Earth Special Forces are the gamers, and we know how this plays out. We know who's going to win. So, 50 series is going to get absorbed into the ether. It's going to be absorbed into the ether, guys. Like 100% if this actually happens. So, time to hurry and buy one fast. I don't know about that. See, maybe, but yeah, I don't know. It depends on where you are on the fence. Like, if you guys, technically, the thing is, now is the time to upgrade the platform. Now is not the time to be buying a graphics card. But there is a fear that, and I've been thinking about this more and more, that if Bitcoin gets over 90,000, if it starts approaching 100,000, that's going to kick off all the innovation in the crypto world. And there's going to be all these altcoins that ride that wave and all that hype and all the investors and all the speculators. It's going to happen. It's going to happen. So if Bitcoin keeps going up the way it's doing right now. So Bitcoin is what determines whether the crypto wave rises or falls. And right now it's rising. And that's going to build up hype. That's going to draw a lot of attention. And that is going to mean a very bad thing for anyone who wants to buy a 5090, a 5080, a Radeon, whatever it's called, the new RDNA 4 with the PS5 Pro ray tracer engine or whatever. Like, yeah, all that stuff, guess what? Gone like that. The Thanos snap, it's all gone. The time to buy a 4090, it's now or never. Well, so here's the other thing too. There was another article that I think came up about NVIDIA discontinuing. Let's see, NVIDIA product lines. Okay, right here. NVIDIA's product lines now fully devoted toward the next gen RTX 50 series. 40 series takes back seat. So technically, they've shut off production of 8102, 8103, 8104, and 8106. Currently, the only Blackwell or the only Ada that is still manufactured is the AD107, which is the low-end mobile. So right here, let's zoom in on this. NVIDIA's latest RTX 50 series GPU will be launched on time in January and will not be delayed any further, which means that the RTX 40 series has entered the final stage of inventory clearance. So when it says inventory clearance, you know what that means? They don't make them anymore. So NVIDIA stopped making 4090s a while ago. So all the 4090s that are showing up as new in stock is all that's there. It's literally like the whole 40 series got flashed with Chernobyl radiation and they're already just dead. It's just waiting for they're not going to be replenished. There's no more brand new stem cell 4090s. Like once those are dead, once those are gone, they're gone. That's the end. The 40 series is like dust. It's like the Thanos snap. You know what I'm saying? Like that's it. So they're gone with only about 2 months left. NVIDIA's real 40 GPU production line capacity has long been gradually transferred to RTX 50. And the main production line has now been fully transferred. So RTX 40 is now in the final stage. They don't make them anymore, basically is what it's saying. According to the latest news from Upstream, NVIDIA has completely withdrawn the 8106 production line, and the production capacity has been fully transferred. That's a big deal because they typically keep making 106 for a long time after they discontinue the other ones, the higher end ones. Transferred to the RTX 50 series production, and only the 8107 has been temporarily retained. This is the super low end. This is what is this? The 4050, the 4050 or whatever, 4050 Ti or whatever, 3050 Ti. It's the really low-end stuff, the 3050. Therefore, the RTX 40 series GPU has entered the last quarter of inventory clearance, and the RTX 40 mid to high-end series has gradually stopped production supply, and the product switching has been accelerated. The supply of AIC brand manufacturers in the future market will become less and less. So, yeah. Bet most are in crypto hands. I don't know about that. I haven't really looked too much into the crypto to see if people are mining. People are definitely not mining Bitcoin with GPUs. So that much I can tell you. No one mines crypto, or no one mines Bitcoin with GPUs. It's all ASIC now. So they would mine other things and then trade those other coins for Bitcoin. That's how they're going to make money. That's how they're going to get Bitcoin, using GPUs. AIC stands for add-in card. That basically means AIB graphics card. So this would be like a Supreme X from MSI, or a PNY Vertex, or a Zotac. That's what this means. In my country, we only have the Supreme X Liquid and ROG 4090, and at $2,000. This week, the board partners add-in cards finally got their first real engineering samples for evaluation, so they have some timing to solder and test. Oh, via Igor's lab. Furthermore, in addition to the higher-end variants, NVIDIA is entering the production of its entry-level. Okay. The same was the case with the older 30 series, which saw production of the GA107 for a good while. The higher-end products were gradually discontinued. Okay, so yeah, it's definitely going to get announced at CES then. So we are, what, 1.5 months out from the announcement? It's the week after New Year's week, for those that are curious. So that's that. Okay, well, I think that was like the main story. I don't think there was anything else. The Zen 6 uses AM5. I mean, there's some other stuff, but I mean, that was the main one. So 50 series is coming in fast. It's fast approaching. I think it may launch in February, though. February or March. Depending on the SKU. Alright, well, I think that's a good... Let's see, we've been live for almost 3 hours, so now is a good stopping point. Have you thought about liquid cooling your main gaming PC? I am liquid cooling my main gaming PC. The 9800 X3D is on the LT720. Are you asking about this computer? This computer is the live stream computer. This one is on an air cooler. I don't plan on changing that anytime soon. Yes, it's coming out. It'll be next year. It'll be in the first part of next year. 3D printing trucker just subscribed to the channel. Welcome to the channel. So, oh, custom loop? No, I'm not gonna. I change my computer too often. I'm messing with it way too often. I don't want to do custom loop. I change out GPUs and stuff like too often. And CPUs. It would be too much of a hassle. Okay. Wait, what are you guys talking about? Oh, you guys are talking about that burning thing? Yeah, that was user error, guys. It's so obvious. Like, I think I know what you guys are talking about. What was that story? Yeah, I guess I should address that, because that was one thing that stuck out. Yeah, this guy, someone messed up their 9800 X3D. See, the problem is he never got it to post, or he or she never got it to post. Also, you can see that however they were trying to install the thing, they put it in wrong. It only goes in one way. So, and they broke the clip, this plastic retainer clip on the side of the ILM socket. When they pressed this down, they broke this. So what was probably happening was this was lifting the CPU. So like here, if I've got one, what is this? I don't even know what this is. So I got what's in here? Oh, well, this is whatever. This is, I got like all these weird CPUs in here. What is this? I guess we'll use this one for demonstration. So, okay, so right here, there's a CPU right here. So, if you look at this, on the Ryzen CPU, there's an arrow right here. There's an arrow in the northwest corner, the top left corner. That needs to line up with the socket. So I don't think they put it in wrong. Like, I don't think he like rotated it or anything. I think when they put it in, they didn't put it in centered, and they pressed down on it with the ILM, and the ILM basically crushed this thing. And because of that, these pins are misaligned. Because it's basically, instead of it being straight, it ends up like this. It's ever so slightly tilted, but it's very hard to notice. And that's why it messed up. That's definitely user error. As somebody who has literally built maybe like 100, 200 plus PCs, I have never like once ever seen that happen. So as long as you install it correctly, that's not going to happen. Yeah, that is straight up user error. That is user error. The fact also that it never once turned on, it never posted properly, means that it was basically broken. Like, it basically shorted pins as soon as they turned it on. Yeah. So, that's user error. That's an example of user error, guys. Yeah, that's user error. Also the tab on the left in the yellow box is crushed. The tab. Yeah, that's what I'm talking about. This is exactly what I'm talking about. I called it the retention bracket because when you put the CPU in, this plastic molding, this black plastic molding along the side, it basically helps align the CPU. Yeah. The other thing too is it's this little notch here and the one down here. So this is the top. So the right-hand side is the top. The left-hand side of this picture is the bottom. Yeah, see? Someone even shows a picture of how it's wrong. See how this notch is not all the way in? And there it is. That's it. That's duplicating the problem right there. Yeah, that's literally, yeah. Yeah. That's user error. So I guess if you don't know how to install a CPU, watch a video, because there's a lot of videos out there on how to install a Ryzen AM5 CPU. Yeah, Gamers Nexus bought it, and they're gonna find out that it's a user error, most likely, because, I mean, that's pretty obvious. Let's see. Oh, here's another picture of the broken clip there. Anyway. Yeah, well, that's unfortunate for him, I guess, or her. Lessons learned, right? Mistakes were made. That's all I can say to that. MSI will not honor that warranty. MSI will definitely... I mean, that's... Well, I don't know. Maybe they would. Out of, like, a friendly gesture. Although, if Steve bought the CPU, I really hope Steve also bought the motherboard. Because if Steve only bought the CPU... It's going to be really hard to tell with just the CPU what exactly happened. The motherboard tells a lot, though. The motherboard, I think, tells the whole story. There's a heavy scratch on the part of the on the inner part of the ILM. Where is that? There's a heavy scratch. Where? On the ILM. This silver thing is the ILM. I don't see a scratch. Oh, on this? Oh, wait, this? That's thermal paste. Why is there thermal paste like all... What? Yeah, and also don't try to like mimic someone who is a lot more experienced. Well, you can, but you don't build it as fast as somebody who is very experienced at building. Like for me, I've built so many PCs over the years. Like to me, it's second nature. It's to me, building a computer is like driving a car. Like I open the ILM socket, I line up the CPU, I put it down. The notches are there. The arrow is pointing in the right direction. Nothing's out of place. Close the socket. Close the latch. The other thing too is when you're closing the latch, if there is a lot of resistance, you're not doing something right. There will be resistance when you're closing the latch. However, it shouldn't be like, hey, it's like something stuck. It shouldn't be that much resistance. It'll resist you because it's a spring loading mechanism as you're pressing this down. But it's not going to be like, hey, this is really hard to close. If it's really, really hard to close, that's a sign that you're not doing something right. Oh, look, they actually have a Founders Edition card, too. Wow. They have a Founders Edition 4090. Or 4080. That's not a super, because it's not blacked out. Yeah, that's definitely user error. Anyway. All right, guys, that's gonna be it for this stream. We do these every Thursday evenings. If you're new to the channel, do get subscribed if you like this sort of in-depth content and these open, free-form discussions on all things PC DIY and gaming, because we also do discuss gaming from time to time. Hence the name of the channel. So do tune in. This is a great stream for those of you that are building PCs and you have questions. Go ahead and ask your questions during the stream. Even if I'm talking about something, we can address that as a separate topic during the stream. So that's going to be it for this week. I will see you guys on the next episode of Tech Thursdays. Until then, I'll catch you guys next time. Thanks.